So episode 15 of Fruits Basket released the other day, and once again, it was a great one. As has been the tradition for the past few episodes, Yuki was really heavily focused on, which was great. Over the past handful of episodes, his growth as a character has been so pronounced, and he's been able to push further into the inner workings of his mind and his character history. It's been really intriguing to sort of unbox everything that's happened to him and work through some of his trauma and see that he's stronger than he gives himself credit for. We start off the episode with Yuki talking to his teacher about his mother rescheduling his parent-teacher conference. It's a small moment, but it's useful in further developing her character and implies that she's pushy and dominant. Then Toru comes out and chats with him and tells him to do his best and stand up for what he wants at his interview, to follow his own path. She's spurred on to do this by her memories of what Akito said to her rather than Yuki's concerns about his mother, but it was exactly what he needed to hear at that moment. And this small moment gives him the strength to stand up for what he wants later on. Back to that plot thread later, next we have a little comedic montage of some of the parent-teacher conferences, and I thought this was a fun little sequence that offsets the more serious tone that's to come later in the episode. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times, but it's really important in a show where there are serious elements to offset some of that with some lighthearted themes or some jokes of some kind. Otherwise you risk the audience getting too accustomed to the seriousness and it losing its effect. And the same goes for comedy. You have to strike the right balance, and I think Fruits Basket does it perfectly. We come to Toru's interview, and I think this sequence was one of the highlights of the episode for me. Shigure is probably one of those characters that doesn't really get all that much development. His motivations are mostly kept purposely mysterious. You never quite know what he's going to do or what he's going to say, and for this scene we got to see both sides of that mysterious personality. On one hand, we get to see the cheeky and goofy prankster who gets under people's skin for laughs, like when he wears Hattori's suit or proposes marriage to Toru. But then we also get hints at something below the surface when characters who are looking out for Toru's best interest, like her teacher and her friends, tell her to watch out for him, and that he's more than what he seems. I feel like it's starting to lay the foundations for his endgame plot, and I also like that in the flashback with Rin, even though he laughs off his behaviour, I got the feeling he has a lot of internalised sadness about what he's doing, even if he doesn't necessarily regret it. We then got a little bit of Kyo and Toru's story progression. It wasn't really development per se, but more an expansion on what we already know. We see that Toru has a lot of internalised and compartmentalised fears which specifically revolve around people leaving her, whether that was her father, her mother, and now Kyo. The show seemed to be confirming beyond a doubt that her and Kyo are end goals. It was pretty obvious based on the entirety of this season, but when you actually get to see it from inside her own head, it's a nice change. It validates their relationship, especially when normally you see the feelings from Kyo's perspective. And the fact that she values him on the same level as her mum, it makes it really clear where the story's going from here. Then we see Kyo again, but like in the previous couple of episodes, it's very brief. And I like this. It's not because I don't like his character, but because it makes us as the audience feel the way the other characters feel. We don't see him because he's pulling back from his friends and his family due to his impending confinement, which makes us as the audience want to see him more and more. It's the little things that make this show great, and this is just one of the many things they do to affect the audience on that subconscious level. But just like last episode, this distance is bridged by Toru. After reflecting on how all he wants to do is to spend time with her, she invites him to hang out with everybody at the house. Once again, proving beyond a shadow of the doubt that this ship is setting sail. And then we come to the main event, our first look at Yuki's mum. This is a pretty sad sequence, and I think it really uncovers the true extent of Yuki's mental trauma. Whilst Akito inflicted abuse on him, I think what hurt him most was that his mother didn't stand up for him, that she pretended everything was fine for her own gain whilst he had to suffer alone. That she didn't love him like she should have, and I think this actually makes her one of the most hateable characters on the show. Whilst Akito's human trash, it's clear that there's something deeper, and you can brush him off as an evil, abusive caricature. But for the mother, she feels more real, like a real person that abandoned the son she should have protected from this clearly unstable person. Then, in the interview itself, she makes us double down on hating her guts when she insults his teacher, his decisions, and essentially tells him what his future should be. And then, in a flashback, she essentially tells him he was a tool for her own personal gain. She starts to dominate him, and he begins to withdraw into his shell until the timely arrival of Ayame, which for once in his life is a pleasant surprise for Yuki. Suddenly, with this arrival, their mother loses all her power. Instead of being a controlling and domineering woman, she essentially shrinks back and flees from the room when she realizes that even Ayame, who at one point could have cared less about Yuki, has been able to earn his brother's love. Usually, Ayame is just around for comedic relief, and he and Yuki just fight on and on. But here we see Yuki able to take refuge with a member of his family, which contrasts nicely with the flashback where his mother wouldn't protect him. After she leaves, Yuki chases after her and tells her he wants to be his own man and live his life how he wants to. Instead of being the imposing and powerful figure of his youth, he finds her small and thin and scared. And I think it's at this point he lets her go in his heart as his true mother. And then Toru arrives, and I think it's really telling that this happens here. I think at this point it's clear that she's not going to be his romantic endgame going forward, but I think it's going to be more of a surrogate parent or older sibling. She's the complete antithesis of his mother. She's caring and nurturing, makes sure she always has time for him, helps him work through his issues, protects him from Akito, and tries to mediate his fights with other members of the family. just like a mother would. I don't think he's actually come to this realization yet, but in time he will, I expect. And then he gets dragged away from her to go to the student council as Toru looks on. Almost like a child leaving home for the first time and becoming an adult as their parent looks on proudly. Then, we wrap things up with a glorious post-credit scene of IMA terrorizing the student council. Honestly, Fruits Basket is becoming one of my favourite shows of all time. Is it too big a call to say it's practically perfect? There's almost never a misstep with storytelling and arcs, and every episode leaves you wanting more. All the characters are engaging and powerful, and even antagonistic characters draw you in really easily. Let me know what you guys thought of the episode, and we'll catch up next week.